right, and so there you have that. Lansdale Tanyanya joins us now. He's the chairman, National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency. That's NOSTRA. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, interestingly, I mean, lots of challenging times ahead for NOSTRA because they've got so many things to consider. Well, how are you considering all of this ever since you came on board?
Well, as you're aware, we were only inaugurated last week on Monday. And in compliance with the minister's directive, we had our inaugural meeting right after the inauguration. The next day, we had another board meeting, a full board meeting in the offices of NOSTRA, during which we got briefed by the management for the first time. And what that served to do was to give us a sense of the enormity and complexity of the challenge that we have to deal with. There are difficulties, clearly, and the report highlights some of those difficulties, but they are daunting difficulties, daunting challenges. But we are confident that, of course, we have the right leadership, and the person of the President, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, himself very concerned about the environment, coming as he were from the epicenter of the problem itself. So we are inspired by the commitment of the President's leadership in this direction, and everybody on board and my colleagues on the board are willing to confront it the best way possible.
So what is being done about increasing the capacity of NOSTRA to attend to some emergencies, as it were?
Look, the truth about it is that NOSTRA is a relatively young agency created only in 2006. What we saw on ground when we just went around briefly to interact with the staff is a group of competent and professional patriotic Nigerians who are willing to do their job well. Whether they have the resources and the adequacy of or otherwise of such resources to do that job is a different thing altogether, and it's a matter for debate. But clearly one of the things we came up with is that we need to work as a board with all the stakeholders to create an environment that makes them optimize their performance. And there are several challenges, like I said, and they're just they can be debilitating.
You know, how grave, sorry to cut you there, I'm thinking, how grave is this problem of oil spill?
That is what I would rather want to speak to this morning. You've seen the reports, the highlights, some of which you showed on the screen a few moments ago, and the problem is very grave. What concerns us, amongst other things, is the fact that there appears to be so much ignorance in the public space about the enormity of the problem. It's like the people who live in the epicenter of this problem. And by the way, oil spills are not restricted to Niger Delta oil producing areas. NOSTRA's mandate includes oil spills from tankers, elsewhere, pipelines, anywhere across the country within the territory that is Nigeria, filling stations. So it's an enormous mandate that NOSTRA has, for which they will require extensive manpower, they will require material resources, they will require so much more to deal with. But in terms of the epicenter of where oil is actually produced and the core of the problem appears to persist, it is a real problem. It's a huge problem. It's humongous. It poses clear and present danger to national security, to our economy, to public safety and public health. The problem is multifaceted. Yeah, like we can see on the screen.
This is huge. How is
massive?
How are you going to tackle this? Because I mean, people will expect so much from NOSTRA.
I agree with you, and that is the challenge before us as a board, to work with the management, to work with the staff, and we've started already by just trying to encourage and motivate the staff. There are several areas we need to pay attention to. One of it is to look at how the agency is currently configured. Is it adequate? And luckily, we have, thankfully, a process going on in the National Assembly where the amendment to the NOSTRA Act has reached an advanced stage. Okay. I think it's at the level of third reading. And it's comforting to us that the leadership of the National Assembly, both in the Senate and in the House, and the leadership of the committees in particular, are very enthusiastic, very passionate about this matter. So we hope that that also helps to address some of the defects in the framework for engaging this very important matter.
You know, this is coming on the heels of claims, accusations, and counter-accusations, denials especially against oil majors, specifically Shell, just before your inauguration. How do you hope to tackle all of this, to really go in and bring up what exactly it is, the situation, the true situation? Because if the international bodies, as well as so many other bodies, are saying that, well, the enormity of this particular problem is being downplayed by some of those fingered as corporate, it means that we may just not be scratching the surface yet.
Well, I agree, which is why one of the things we resolved as a board immediately is that we recognize that there is, like I said, so much ignorance about the work of NOSDRA, about the enormity of the problem. And one of the things we are committed to as a board is to work with the management to make the organization more public-facing than perhaps it may have been in the past. Public-facing because this has to do with oil. This is all of the politics, all of the talk, all of the argument about control of power and whatever it is in Nigeria is about control of resources, and this resource is oil. And what we want to put out there is for everybody who goes to buy diesel. Oil has done a lot of good. It has brought us prosperity in some respect. It has brought prosperity to individuals, to families, to communities. But that prosperity has come at a very huge cost to some communities, to some families, to some individuals. And we need to be human enough to pay some attention to these people. And it's important because when it's all said and done, when we move to some era beyond oil, what is going to happen to these communities who have paid such a huge price? And then we may discover that we may find new basis for prosperity, but we cannot enjoy that prosperity because people are still bitter about the fact that nothing was done to take care of their environment and for the huge price they had paid for decades, to give prosperity to the rest of the world. So it's important that everybody understands that we can no longer have this conversation in an adversarial manner. Nobody's against anybody. NOSDRA exists to broker relationships for the benefit of all. NOSDRA is not against the community. NOSDRA is for the community. NOSDRA gives a voice to the communities, to the individuals who suffer. NOSDRA is for the oil companies because we believe that oil is important to keep civilization going, but oil can be extracted and utilized in a manner that respects the values and lives of people who happen to live in that environment, whose natural resource just happens to be what God has given them. NOSDRA also will speak for the government. So at the end of the day, whether you are in government, whether you are in the community, whether you are in the oil company, you are a human being. And when oil pollution devastates the ecology, contaminates the food chain, results in sicknesses that we still can't explain in some cases, increases, like some experts have told us, in the rate of cancer, for instance, you cannot help but be concerned. There is no winner or loser in this matter. There are only victims. Ultimately, everyone is a victim.
Is it really possible to get this back to normal?
It is possible. Why not? I mean, science, the experts tell us, can make it possible. The point we need to make is we need to muster the will. Every stakeholder needs to come around the table. Let's have an honest conversation. This problem is a huge one. It's staring us in the face. It's our collective shame.
You know, apart from ruptured pipelines, don't you think that well, the case of cases of oil theft still amounts to some of these spills?
Look, I won't discount that, but the point to make is this phenomenon of oil theft, when did it start, really? We cannot trace this phenomenon of oil theft to beyond 7-10 years ago. 12-15 years at the maximum. But oil has been drilled in this country, in the Niger Delta, starting from Olebri, from way back 1956-57. So, and we know it is not possible, even in the most competent environment with the best of practices, to drill oil without this incidence of oil spills occurring. It's inadvertent. Sometimes it's inadvertent, but for all of those decades, before we started experiencing oil theft, what has happened? What about the oil that was spilled all of that period? And by the way, let us establish this relationship. How did people who otherwise pursue their legitimate means of livelihood in their traditional manner become, quote-unquote, people who began to tamper with pipelines? I think that some people have explained it this way. You find that your environment is damaged. You are traditionally a fisherman, fisherwoman, and you can no longer find fish in your environment. You've got to survive somehow. But that is not to say that everybody in those communities is engaged in oil theft, and it's a small minority, and it's not even people, in most cases, not even people from those communities that are engaged in oil theft. Oil theft is engaged by people from everywhere, including, in some cases, people have alluded to complicity from within the industry, because the expertise, the sophistication you require to access some of the pipeline infrastructure and steal oil successfully is not something that's available to just anybody on the street.
Well, from the look of things now, I mean, this is a huge one. What will be the plan to liaise working with the oil companies? Because lots of people say that they don't see international practices in the cleanup of these communities. How do you intend to get that view across to the oil companies?
Well, like I said, as a board, we've taken the view that we have to engage with all stakeholders. First, I think what's very important is the current amendment of the Act, because it is important that a regulatory agency like NOSRA has the capacity to back and, where necessary, to bite. And like we said in our initial media briefing, to put them, give them so much responsibility without commensurate power to sanction may not be the best. And some of the highlights of the Amnesty International report also makes reference to that. So it also requires allocation of greater resources. So I think everybody needs to come around this notion that we must find somewhere in that process. I'll give you an example. In the United States, for instance, the agency that has to deal with this matter gets robust funding from a certain amount charged on every barrel of oil, whether imported or produced nationally within the United States. 5 cents, I think, at the time when the Act was created. So we need to create a scenario in which the very process that creates this problem also contributes to the solution. And yeah, it's important that all of us as a community must come together, because no one should live under the impression that it's just a part of the country that is suffering this. Everyone is potentially a victim.
Wow, well, this is going to be a very huge one. So hopefully when the act is being passed, we do hope that it will at least contribute to a large extent. And
in addition, we also count on the partnership of the media. It is important that the right information goes out. Again, we also must speak to those who are in the very insignificant minority who engage in oil theft and destruction of pipeline infrastructure, that what they are doing is madness. If we say that the oil companies are polluting the environment, we cannot contribute to even greater pollution of the environment. There can be no justification for anybody to go because at the end of the day, how much money can you possibly make from that illegal activity? At the risk of your health, at the risk of the damage to your community and to other people living around you. I don't care how much money you make, but at the end of the day, if you have to spend all of that money to treat a condition, say like cancer, that eventually takes your life, you become a loser. So we need the help of the media, and we've asked for help from all our stakeholders. Everybody, we're just going to appeal to everybody that this is a matter that impacts on all of us. And if we don't do something very soon and decisive about it, what we are doing actually is we are killing our tomorrow today, just like we killed our yesterday, our today yesterday.
Well, interesting. Well, Lancelot Anyanya is the chairman, National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency. Well, thank you for coming, and wish you all the best as you go about this responsibility.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll return in just a moment to join us again.